for 515 Fantasy Football.
I know football. Are you ready for some football?
Domination on Sundays begins with listening to these guys on Thursdays.
You ready for this?
Over 40 years of fantasy football experience between them.
Yeah!
One is a proud veteran of the United States Marine Corps, husband and father, entering his 19th year of fantasy competition. Brian Eikenberry. The other, also a proud husband and father, is one of the winningest fantasy minds in the state. Celebrating 25 years of excellence, Andy Hall.
Let's get the game on!
It's showtime. The 515 Fantasy Football Show with your hosts, Andy Hall and Brian Eikenberry.
B-R-U-T-A-L. Brutal Week 5 in the NFL, which we saw a number of notable names go down with significant injury. And on the other hand, there was plenty of beauty to offset the brutality. We hope you were able to weather the storm, but are realistic enough to know that some of you are in trouble at this point. We're here to fix it, like Fix It Felix. We are 515 Fantasy Football. Andy Hall alongside Brian Eikenberry. Did you survive Week 5, buddy?
I'm going to wreck it.
I know, right? It's a great movie.
I love Wreck-It Ralph, and I can't wait for the sequel that's coming.
I didn't know there was a sequel.
Yeah, there's a sequel coming. Wreck-It Ralph 2.
So they made a video, an actual arcade game, Fix It Felix, to make it look like it was released back in like 1982.
That'd be cool.
And they put it in the Underground bar here in Des Moines, Iowa.
I was not aware of this.
Do you know the Underground arcade place?
Yeah.
What's it called again? I forget. Anyway, it's got a whole bunch of old school arcade games, and it's got skee ball, and they got a bar there you can drink. It's pretty cool. Anyway, not that I'm lobbying for a new sponsor on the show, but yeah, they have Wreck-It Ralph there, which is very cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So there's also just completely sidetracked headlines. There is a top 10 movie lines not to say in bed.
Oh, no.
And it was Wreck-It Ralph was one of the titles. I think it was like number 4. It's like, I'm going to wreck it.
I'm going to wreck it. That's awesome.
But yeah, fantasy football, wow. It's crazy, man. It's hard to grasp it. It's hard to make the right calls. I think I whiffed on everything last week, just my own self. Managed to somehow scathe by 1 win out of 3 leagues. And it just, I don't know, man. I don't know what's happening right now.
Well, the good news is we've got our noses deep into week
Whoa.
6 at this point. Smell it, Brian, smell it. We invite you to the two-way conversation and like us on Facebook, 515 Fantasy Football. We're on Twitter as well, at 515 Fantasy. I'm at Andy Hall Radio. He is at IkeFFB. That's IKEFFB. As you come to expect, we answer all and ignore none, but if you're looking for some more in-depth help, there is an option to get specialized help from Dr. Brian and myself.
What?
You never heard of Patreon, Brian?
Yeah, well, a doctor, I didn't know went through med school. I thought it was more like a Mr. Pibb kind of a guy.
Well, we can certainly get you a tool belt, and you could be Fix It Felix if you like.
Yeah, I'll take that. No, you head on over to Patreon if you want some VIP treatment, a little bit of VIP service. You get us all to yourselves. 3 levels to choose from, 5, 10, and 20. And patreon.com. You'll get bargain bins early. You'll get... we can give you a full team overhaul every week, Saturday night specials. I mean, we got it all. We can help you out.
Nearly 2 hours of Week 6 predictions and prognostications coming your way. We've looked at the numbers. We've dissected the metrics. We will break down all the matchups, grading all the fantasy-relevant players. If you need a dart throw or 3, the bargain bin happening a little later on, sponsored by Twisted Vine Brewery. Hit Brian with 3 of Fantasy Stuff as questions in the pop quiz later, and recap Week 5 of the 515 Fantasy Listener League, courtesy of Iowa Firecracken as well. Who's ready for some of the best intel around? Let's begin with some headlines of Fantasy Note. More big injuries to contend with from Week 5. 70% of them from one team, Brian. Isn't it crazy? The Giants just said nobody left. Odell Beckham Jr. out for the season with a broken fibula. Brandon Marshall, also done in 2017, had season-ending surgery on his ankle earlier this week. Sterling Shepard left Sunday's game as well, having hurt his ankle. He's doubtful this week. I mean, they literally just have nobody else. I bet you can't wait to get to that matchup, Brian.
Yeah, I'm super excited. It's going to take me maybe a minute and a half.
I'm going to be timing you. More news from the dumpster fire that is the New York Giants. Have you heard this one? D-back Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie was suspended for a game for conduct unbecoming of the team. He left a team meeting, basically, and he had thrown a fit after the Sunday loss, and then came to a team meeting, Coach Ben McAdoo wanted to have a sit-down with this fella and talk about his conduct, and he stormed out of the meeting on him. So the team has basically suspended him.
You know what? No, there's not one person who's better than the team, and DRC isn't the best player. I mean, it's not 7 years ago, DRC, so you should probably check your ego at the door. Your team's 3-2. You're in it, man.
Yeah.
I mean, you're still in the division, and you're acting like you're 0-5.
Wow. So bad. Moving on, Titans quarterback Marcus Mariota, who had to sit out Week 5 with a hamstring injury, is practicing this week and shaping up to be a game-time decision for Monday night versus Indy. I suppose they just feel like they just can't survive with anybody but Marcus Mariota. They trotted out Matt Castle's nearly dead corpse last weekend, and it did not look good.
He looked like $15.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it was even that. More like $14.47 maybe.
It was terrible.
Some loose change in the pocket there. Vikings wide receiver Stephon Diggs was off and on the field last Monday, pulled a groin muscle, said he should be good to go for this Sunday's rivalry game versus Green Bay and Minnesota. The Vikings certainly need him. Packers running back Ty Montgomery, not a good bet to return this week. Aaron Jones, of course, his replacement. They say even if Ty Montgomery is active this coming weekend, that Aaron Jones likely will get the start in that game. Wide receiver Jordy Nelson practicing in full this week. No worries there with the hammy. Patriots quarterback Tom Brady sat out Wednesday's practice with a shoulder ailment. I'm so tired of guys like just all of a sudden, out of nowhere, like Gronk's thigh injury last week. What is it with this Patriots team, Brian? It's aggravating.
I think it's just everybody. There's tons of injuries, tons of things. I think it's the lack of, I've said this for 3 years on the show, it is a lack of off-season programs, training, everything.
Could be. I mean, that's one reason I suppose we see these guys that hold out, and they typically either underperform like Le'Veon Bell did early on, or they get hurt.
How many hamstrings you see all the time?
All the
Stuff like that, those are preventable injuries.
Tight end Rob Gronkowski also not at practice yesterday with that thigh injury that held him out of Week 5. A report from the Boston Herald, though, suggests he will play this week. Redskins tight end Jordan Reed healthy again following the team's bye week. First time we've been able to say that in a very long time. And Jordan Reed is off the injury report. Head coach Jay Gruden called Rob Kelly a long shot to play this week. He's, of course, got that ankle injury. Bengals tight end Tyler Eifert having season-ending surgery on his back, according to ESPN's Adam Schefter. Now, I don't think I have to go much further here, but people were drafting him as a tight end 1, even after we begged you, pleaded you, do not take Tyler Eifert, a guy we were avoiding in the preseason shows, and we told you so. Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce remains in the league's concussion protocol. He did not practice on Wednesday. Falcons wide receiver Julio Jones limited at practice yesterday. He, of course, has the hip ailment. Dolphins wide receiver Devontae Parker did not practice yesterday. He's got the ankle injury. Lions wide receiver Kenny Golladay returned to practice this week. If he gets back in that lineup, Brian, how much does that change the dynamic of the Lions offense?
I don't think it was any one player. I think it's just more they have moved to such a conservative play calling at this point. It's super frustrating being a fan, and they've been taking some heat for it recently, losing these stupid games, and they're not being aggressive until, we got 4 minutes. We might want to score 22 points.
Isn't that kind of par for the course for Matthew Stafford-led offense, though? It seems like Matthew Stafford is always that guy that's just out there slinging in the fourth quarter, trying to make a comeback.
Right, but you've got everything that you needed to do to not have to do that. And when they want to, in games like Arizona, in games like even playing Atlanta, those weren't those big come-from-behind pushes that typically have been seen. So now they went to a more conservative play calling last week, and it bit them right in the freaking butt. It cost them everything because they weren't being aggressive. So we'll see what happens with the Saints.
There's no question in my mind, though, that a guy like Kenny Golladay can bring something to the table that the Lions don't have when he's not in the lineup. I mean, Marvin Jones brings what he brings. Golden Tate brings what he brings. Ebron brings nothing. Darren Fells is the guy now at tight end.
I guess we can see what kind of influence he has based on Tate's catches because Galladay's been out. Tate has done nothing in the last 2 weeks. So we'll see what happens. If Tate spikes back up to 7-8 catches now, you can thank Kenny Golladay.
It might have something to do with an underperforming running game as well, and maybe that's something we'll cover a little later on when we're going through the matchups. I do believe you got the Lions game, so we'll talk about that.
Everybody's A's.
Boy, oh boy. Take Brian's advice. He knows. Jets running back Matt Forte returned to practice yesterday. He's been dealing with the turf toe injury, missed a couple of weeks there, and that could muddy an already terrible situation there in Jets country as running back Bilal Powell sat out of practice yesterday with the calf injury, and it looked like Elijah McGuire would be able to get a full workload this coming weekend, but lo and behold, Matt Forte is back at practice and might muddy up the waters just a little bit there in case you were planning on rolling out Elijah McGuire, a guy we'll talk about later on in the program. Brian and I have lots of talking to do over the next hour and change as we break down all the matchups this week, grade all the fantasy-relevant players, and we'll begin with a Thursday night matchup very shortly, a matchup which will just, scratch the surface of what we have to offer in Week 6. This is 515 Fantasy Football on 1350 AM ESPN Radio. Talking fantasy football, 515 Fantasy Football style. Andy Hall, Brian Eikenberry on 1350 AM and 102.1 FM ESPN Radio, Des Moines, Iowa. You can get the show digitally as well on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and online at espndesmoines.com. Quick reminder to like us on Facebook, 515 Fantasy Football. We're on Twitter as well, getting a lot of action there, a lot of questions about who to start, who to sit. We are at 515 Fantasy. You want to hit us up individually. I'm at Andy Hall Radio. He is at Ike FFB, IKEFFB. Let's begin with the Thursday night matchup and the breakdowns, Brian.
Giddy up. It is the Eagles and the Carolina Panthers. Let's start on the Eagles side of the ball. Quarterback Carson Wentz. I'm going to give him a B-. Wentz on the road versus a top 3 defense is not looking pretty. I think this will be his worst game of the year as the Eagles still lack big playmakers. Panthers only give up 190 yards through the air, and Wentz averages about 250. Still has a good 3-to-1 touchdown ratio. I like Wentz, just not this week on the road after a confident Carolina Panthers, pretty much top of the NFC. Right? 4-1, knocking everybody off.
Looking pretty good after, what we thought was a pretty shaky start, particularly for their field general.
Apparently, you just need to make fun of women reporters, and voila.
Wow,
happens.
Yeah, things happen. I don't know.
Woo! Running back LeGarrette Blount, I'm going to give him a B. Panthers only give up about 80 on the ground, but Blount is able to carry a 25-touch workload. And by virtue, he is always able to break one off for about 30 yards or more. To couple that with his 5.8 yards per carry average he has going for him right now.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, too. I mean, to think that Wendell Smallwood might not even play this week, so it might be even more LeGarrette Blount.
And as I was so happy to snag him about 2.5 weeks ago off the waiver wire, huge ad for me. Wide receiver Alshon Jeffrey, C, is a shell of his former self and is third in yardage on the team behind Ertz and Aguilar, even being the second on the team with 21% of the targets. So what's that tell you? Jeffrey isn't making the use of his catches. He's catching the ball and getting tackled. There's no yards after contact. There's nothing. So keep an eye on that. I'm not a big fan of Jeffrey in this kind of offense. Wide receiver Nelson Aguilar, he's going to get a B-. Boomer bust more than Deshaun Jackson. He's second in yards but has the most touchdowns on the team. He was my bargain bin a few weeks ago, and he may very well be again. Old Nelson Aguilar. He's always able to break some coverage and get down the field, and next thing you know, he's on the red zone channel.
Yeah, a lot of those are just, Carson Wentz creating opportunity, against a pass rush and eluding defenders, and then Aguilar just breaks free, and he's got that kind of speed, and Wentz has that kind of arm.
Love it. You can also throw Ertz in there as a good play. I mean, look, he's the leading receiver on the team, so why wouldn't you?
Yeah, Ertz is an every week starter.
For sure. On to the Panthers, quarterback Cam Newton, he's going to be a B+. Had his game of the year against the Lions defense, who was caught sleeping with his secret tight end weapon. Oh, yeah, and the Eagles are terrible in pass coverage, so hopefully he keeps it going. The running back situation here, I'm looking for McCaffrey. J. Stu has the ankle issue. Most likely it's McCaffrey from here on out. McCaffrey's going to have a tough day running, so his points are probably going to come in the passing game, so especially great if you're in a PPR. But the Eagles give up just over 60 per game on the ground. So
we haven't seen McCaffrey carry the ball more than like 15 times since that first week of the season.
Yeah, and you won't this week either. It's going to be all passing.
Right.
Kelvin Benjamin, B-. It's been a dud all year, and then he has a breakout game of 60 yards and a touchdown, and everyone gets super excited. Settle down. If you look at the season in the whole, He's just not doing much. In front of his home crowd, maybe 100, but he has no confidence on my roster. Funchess actually has a better grade out of me. B, look, he's been the bright light. He's outscored Benjamin in touchdowns, but barely behind him in yards, seeing as the second highest target share behind McCaffrey at 23.7%. So that tells you about Kelvin Benjamin. He's third in target share. And then you can talk about the tight end Dixon that popped up out of nowhere. Don't freak out. Don't run out there and pick him up. It's just a fluke. That's what happens. The Lions blew it out of their butts last week, and if you take away this last game, he has 100 yards in 4 games, so don't worry about it.
It was like the Lions completely forgot or couldn't see him, as if he's like
enormous.
Invisible. I know, but it was like the Lions didn't see him because he was wide open on every single one of those catches.
Yep.
Every single one of them. That's not going to happen with every matchup, I guarantee it. Chicago at Baltimore. Well, you think I can get through this one in less than 2 minutes, Brian? You want to time me?
We'll see. Ready?
Time me.
Go.
Right. Start with the Bears. Mitchell Trubisky's on the bench. The Ravens are one of only 5 NFL defenses that have intercepted more enemy passes than touchdowns allowed. If you thought last Monday night was rough versus the Vikings, things don't look to be much better on the road in Baltimore, who have allowed a similar amount of yards as Minnesota through the air. Jordan Howard, I'll give a B+ to. Baltimore allow the 10th most rushing yards to opposing backs, roughly 123 yards per game, given up 4 rushing scores on the season. Considering Howard's consistent workload regardless of game script, you got to like him at least a little bit here. Tariq Cohen is a C grade, barely startable against a Ravens defense that hasn't allowed a pass-catching back to score yet through 5 games, a flex at best and only in full PPR leagues. Zach Miller is a B grade. Of all the Bears pass catchers, he's the one I think continues to see a consistent target share, and it doesn't hurt that he's targeted in the red zone often. Over to the Ravens side, Joe Flacco's on the bench, doesn't even deserve a roster spot aside from 2 QB superflex formats. Buck Allen, a B grade. It is obvious the Ravens coaching staff are nervous about trusting Alex Collins and his ball security issues with a full load. Allen handled the vast majority of the Week 5 work and has a similar skill set to Minnesota's Jerick McKinnon, who found plenty of success against Chicago Monday night. Another thing I like about Allen is that, like Jordan Howard, game script doesn't affect his workload. If the Ravens are up, he'll touch the ball. If the Ravens are down, he still gets to touch the ball. Alex Collins, leaving him on the bench, figures to be involved in some early down work, but likely doesn't get more than 10 to 12 touches total, which isn't a good bet for your fantasy lineup in a neutral matchup here. And I'm also going to bench the entire Ravens receiving core. The Bears are good against the pass. Flacco, I don't trust.
All right, so how
Mark.
fast? Yeah, so it's just under 2 minutes.
Just under?
Yeah.
I killed it.
I bet
Nice.
I can do mine in under 30 seconds.
No.
Cleveland at Houston.
Wow.
Browns bench everybody except for Duke Johnson.
Okay.
So that's pretty reasonable. Can you tell me why you would start Ricardo Lewis or Kenny Britt?
No, but I'm trying to figure out your Isaiah Crowell angle.
No, so I don't think Crow has it anymore. I really don't.
I disagree, but go ahead.
I don't think he has it anymore. Duke Johnson leads the team in receiving yards and target share. Duke is a must-start moving forward. And he gets 4.7 yards per carry in the rushing department and has 2 touchdowns. Why would you not start Duke Johnson?
Didn't say don't start Duke Johnson. Said, what is your angle on Isaiah Crowell? Because a guy that doesn't own Duke Johnson but does own Isaiah Crowell wants to know, is Crowell still a decent bet here?
No, not this week. Absolutely not. Even with J.J. Watt out and all that stuff.
That's what I'm thinking about.
No, they're still going to be playing from
Merciless
behind.
and Watt are
They're
both
still
out.
going to be playing from behind, which is money for Duke Johnson because I don't even know who the quarterback is this week because what's-his-face is benched.
Well, it's going to be Kevin Hogan for
yeah.
sure.
So check down to Duke Johnson all day long.
Kevin Hogan, brother.
You're pretty close,
Eat your vegetables, say your prayers.
brother.
I am a real American.
So funny story here. Let's talk about this real quick.
Would love to.
George Foreman has the grill.
Excellent grill.
Do you know the story on how that happened?
No, I don't. Tell me.
So this is a real story. This
Sweet.
is off of Hulk Hogan out of his own mouth. He was on vacation, and his agent could not get a hold of him. A company offered Hulk Hogan, do you want this grill or do you want a juicer? His agent made the call. Hulk Hogan juicer. George Foreman got the grill. Hogan had first go. His agent couldn't get a hold of him, and they needed to go. The agent picked a juicer instead of the grill.
And that
Whoops.
agent, to this day,
He's probably wearing cement shoes.
they don't know where he is.
Yeah.
Wow, what a
So
story.
that's the real story on the George Foreman grill. It could have been Hulk Hogan, but the agent blew it and he picked a juicer over the grill.
I love how George Foreman's children are like George
2,
Jr.,
George 3, George 4,
and then
George
he has
5.
a daughter, Georgina.
Yep.
Georgiana.
Why not?
Like,
You're George
it's
Foreman.
hilarious.
Desean Watson, he's going to get an A. Even though they were getting blown out, he still put up numbers, pushes the ball downfield, and finds his receivers through the air or even with his legs. I like the guy. You should too. Lamar Miller, C, gets plenty of touches, can't make much of them, going against the Browns defense that gives up 76 on the ground, and it should be even better with healing injuries on their defense. Deandre Hopkins, he's going to get an A. Big yards, always finds the end zone to make his owners giddy. Complete turnaround from last year.
He is a wide receiver 1, and solidly, I might add.
Yeah, Desean Watson has done wonders for the stat line of Hopkins, who's currently receiving 38% of the targets, which I accepted to drop a little bit with Fuller back now.
Yeah, I
so
think
it's going to come down now. Fuller, B, low yards, but has 2 touchdown games, two games with 2 touchdowns
There you
apiece.
got it.
There we go. And has led me to victory in the last 2 weeks, only because of him.
Our league that we're in together, I went into that Sunday night game. Was it Sunday or Monday? I always forget which one it was for Houston last week.
Sunday was Houston.
Sunday was Houston, okay. So I'm there, and I'm down like 30 points. I've got Desean Watson and Will Fuller both in my lineup, and I blew out my opponent this week.
So
That's awesome.
I have, in the last 2 weeks in my commission league, the one I super care about.
The one I'm in.
Yes.
Yes.
So in the last 2 weeks, I only have 4 touchdowns out of all of my skill position players, wide receivers and running backs. I have one by 1.2 points and then by 10 points last week. And the only reason I have one, Will freaking Fuller. Will Fuller out of my entire roster are the only 4 touchdowns I have in 2 weeks out of wide receiver and running back position.
That's right. That league, you own Fuller, but I own Watson. That's how it worked,
Yeah.
right? Okay. Well, I own Watson
trade
and lots
for
of
him?
other. I own
You don't
Fuller
have
and lots of
anybody.
other leagues.
I don't want any tight ends.
Are you kidding me? I have all the tight ends, pal.
I know. I don't want any of them.
Travis Kelce and Gronk. Take that.
So yeah, Will Fuller, B, done.
That's it. No Ryan Griffin this week?
Why?
I don't know. Because most leagues you have to start a tight end.
Well, if you have a tight end, start him.
I love it. So the real controversy this week, because we have a little bit of time before we have to jump to our next set of matchups, but the real controversy this week happened in the Minnesota-Chicago game on Monday night after Kyle Rudolph's touchdown.
Oh, which was awesome because the guy I was playing had Stephon Diggs, so he kept going in and out, and it was fantastic.
So you might have caught the touchdown celebration after the Rudolph touchdown.
No.
Duck, duck.
Oh, duck, duck, goose.
Okay, you say goose. I'm from Minnesota. We say duck, duck, gray duck up there.
You say a lot of dumb stuff. Why do you say
no,
gray duck?
we think you're pretty dumb. That's what I think.
No.
It's duck, duck, gray duck. And you know, Kyle Rudolph's not from Minnesota originally, but he is a Minnesotan now. And he should know that if he said goose, he was wrong.
No, it's like
Gray duck.
you have to say a joke trick-or-treating in Des Moines.
Dude,
That's
NFL Twitter was blowing up after the Kyle Rudolph touchdown celebration because people were losing their minds that he said goose. And it's mostly Minnesotans, granted, because we're the only ones in the whole world that say duck, duck, gray duck.
Why do you say gray duck?
I don't know, but we do. We're just different. But I like being different.
Sounds like a profiling thing against the avian ducks.
That's why you listen to this show, that kind of analysis. More matchups coming your way here shortly on the 515 Fantasy Football Show on 1350 AM ESPN Radio. This is the 515 Fantasy Football Show on 1350 AM and 102.1 FM ESPN Radio, Des Moines, Iowa. Andy Hall, Brian Eikenberry breaking down all the Week 6 matchups, grading all the fantasy-relevant players. The next one, a hated rivalry in the NFC North. Green Bay at Minnesota. Begin with the Packers. Aaron Rodgers, a B+. Aside from an explosion of fantasy points in the Christmas Eve game from last season in Lambeau, the Vikings have typically been above average against Rodgers in this passing game. In the 7 games he's faced Minnesota dating back to 2013, he's never topped 300 yards passing, Brian, and only once passed for more than 2 scores in any one game. Still, you're starting him. Ty Montgomery's a C grade, but only if he plays. If the Packers risk re-aggravating those multiple injuries, he may not actually get to touch the ball much, depending on his pain tolerance. Aaron Jones, I'll give a B- to. The Vikings are allowing only 3.3 yards per carry. They've given up only 1 rushing score on the season. Jones looks to get the vast majority of the backfield touches, but faces a nasty front 7 that could rattle the rookie. Devontae Adams is a B-plus this week. Receivers that avoid coverage by the roads to nowhere typically fare well against Minnesota, who give up on average slightly less than 250 yards per game to opposing receivers. Adams is the guy that this week we'll see a lot of Terrence Newman, Trey Waynes, both exploitable matchups. Randall Cobb, a B-minus, like Adams, as long as he doesn't match up against Rhodes, he can have fantasy success too. Slot types like Cobb often turn in flex-worthy fantasy stats against the Vikings. Jordy Nelson is a C-plus this week. He performed very well against the Vikings historically, but this week likely sees a lot of the aforementioned Xavier Rhodes, one of the best shutdown cover corners in the game, according to Pro Football Focus. Martellus Bennett, I'm going to give a B-minus to this week. He finished with 3 receptions for 53 yards last week against the Cowboys, who have fared much better than the Vikings through 5 games. Minnesota allows the 7th most receiving yards to the tight end position, has already given up 3 scores to the position on the season. Over to the Vikings, Case Keenum is your starting quarterback most likely. Gets a B grade from me. The Green Bay Packers been relatively stout against the pass through 5 games, allowing the 10th fewest passing yards, only 7 passing scores on the season thus far. Keenum will dink and dunk his way down the field, avoiding the pass rush, probably avoiding turnovers too, but don't expect huge numbers in this game despite the fact that it could be high scoring. Jerick McKinnon is an A-minus this week. The workload should be there. Green Bay allows the 11th most rushing yards to opposing backs. They've given up 4 rushing scores in 5 weeks. I'll go more in-depth on Jet McKinnon later in the show. Latavius Murray, I'm leaving on the bench. The tortoise to McKinnon's hair. I don't see much fantasy value for him going forward, barring injury to the Vikings' new lead back. Stephon Diggs, I'm giving an A grade to. The Packers have been fantasy-friendly to opposing wide receiver 1 types like Diggs. Des Bryant went for 52 and a score last week. Kendall Wright went 51 and a score in week 4. A.J. Green went for 111 and a score in week 3. Julio Jones caught 5 passes for 108 yards in week 2. Despite the lack of production in Chicago last Monday, I think this is a good spot for Diggs to reemerge. Granted, hopefully he's healthy enough to do it. Adam Thielen's a B+. Everyone saw what Cole Beasley did out of the slot last week, yes? Adam Thielen is a very solid option this week at home against a Packers secondary that may not be able to stop him. And Kyle Rudolph will give a C grade too. Likely stays in to block as he's been doing much of the 2017 season thus far. Got to protect the quarterback since the offensive line hasn't been performing up to par. This isn't the greatest matchup for Rudy anyway, since Green Bay have allowed the 2nd fewest yards to opposing tight ends and no scores thus far in 2017 to the position.
All right, let's do Detroit at New Orleans. Quarterback Matt Stafford, I'm going to give him a B. The lack of games is forcing me to move my confidence meter here. Lack of big games, that is. They're being too conservative, and Ebron is dropping 6 points every week or two. Those things affect the outlook, so it's a drop, even though the Saints are terrible and he should have 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. So if he doesn't do it this week, you need to, as much as this kills me to say it, if they don't do it this week and he doesn't have a big 30-point game, we got some issues and you're going to start need to looking around.
Interesting.
That's my thing. Abdullah, I'm going to give a B+ to. Abdullah's going to get back on here. He's going to hit 100 yards rushing this week. Riddick is virtually non-existent when the game is competitive. It's all Abdullah all the time. He's going to get the workload. Saints are terrible. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen here.
I don't know. I mean, if it doesn't, it makes you wonder why Theo Riddick isn't more involved in a game plan against a team that gives up as much yards as New Orleans does through the air.
Sure.
I don't know.
Golden Tate, unfortunately, I'm giving him a B-. I've given a lot of B-minuses out to the Lions. Let's go. He's been MIA and did the same thing last year, if you remember. Through about the first 6, he was virtually non-existent, and then after that, he just came on strong. The Lions team is begging to get into their bye to retool the offense and get their playmakers involved. He's caught 8 balls over his last 2 games when he should be catching 8 per. Marvin Jones, he's going to get a C+. Boomer bust, but always seems like it's a TD and 30 yards waiting to happen. Saints are terrible. Stafford should throw the long ball a few times again, just like last week. It's just the defense compared to Carolina is the opposite side of the spectrum. So you're probably wondering where the point's going to go. I think Fells goes ape in this game.
You think Darren Fells, a tight end? You, Brian, say
yes.
a tight end.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think Fells is the one I think he's going to get Stafford's touchdowns.
Isn't it funny? It'll be Ebron. Just to spite you.
Dude, I tweet him so much, and he never responds to me.
You are that guy.
I hate him.
That's awful.
I hate him. He
Shouldn't.
always makes comments, so I I come right back at him.
Wow.
He runs his mouth on Twitter a lot. Punk.
How about those Saints, Brian?
Yeah, let's do it. Quarterback Drew Brees, B+. Lions showed signs of weakness. They shipped off AP, and Brees is coming off the bye. Plenty of time to study and learn, and even without the travel, I like his opportunity to throw this week. Ingram and Kamara, what are we doing here? I don't know. Let's give them all B-, except for Ingram. I'll give him a B just because Haloi Nada's out for the season now. And that's a big blow to the Lions' run defense that has been actually doing really well this year. So even with the run defense being pretty legit, the linebackers are playing great. It's still a true split here, even with shipping off AP. It'll be interesting to see how Kamara operates now, if they're still going to use him as the pass catcher and use Ingram up the middle and stuff. It's hard to make a call when you've got this new person coming in and he's gonna claim ownership, or who knows? It could just be the Ingram show. 25 touches a game.
Have a feeling we'll be talking about this later.
All right. Look at you, sneaky little bargain man. Mike Thomas, B-. He's going to draw Slay. He had a bad game last week, but still, he's only allowed 1 touchdown through 5 games. Ted Ginn, big limb here. A for Ted Ginn. He's the only A in this whole matchup. The second cornerback position on the Detroit's roster is under a little bit of limbo, and I think
Quandre Diggs?
Yeah, he splits time with what's his face?
Who?
DJ Hayden.
Oh, Hayden. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they split time now.
Gross.
Which is it's gross. So I think Ginn pops off a big game right here.
Interesting. That it? You have anybody else to talk about?
That's good enough.
Miami at Atlanta begin with the dumpster fire that is the Dolphins. Jay Cutler's on the bench. Why they haven't gone back to Matt Moore yet is a mystery. Maybe that'll happen this week. Landry, Parker, Steel's owners can only hope, right, Brian? Jay Ajayi is a C+. Something doesn't look right with him. He's had a couple really juicy matchups and has yet to produce. Maybe it's the offensive line. Maybe it's the fact that nobody's afraid of Jay Cutler. Maybe that knee's still bothering him. Whatever it is, Ajayi owners everywhere fearing their guy may very well be a bust in 2017. It is possible. Jarvis Landry, a C grade, slight bump in PPR formats, but even then, opportunities in a passing game this anemic come few and far between. Best you can hope for is garbage time production from a replacement quarterback. Devontae Parker's a C grade. Didn't practice yesterday, not a good sign, but really, even if he is play, are you starting him? I don't know if I would outside of desperate circumstances. Kenny Stills, I'll give him a C grade. Why not? Somebody's got to catch the ball, right, Brian? No?
Well, I don't
Maybe
know
not.
about that.
Julius Thomas, I'm leaving on the bench. He simply isn't being used. He's droppable. Can I spend just a few seconds talking about the offensive line coach?
Go ahead.
I don't even remember his name. First of all, he filmed himself, so that's on his phone. He did that. He hit record. He sent that message. And how do you figure that's not going to get out there when you send it to somebody else? I don't care if you think you trust that person.
Because he's an idiot.
What? I mean, come on, dude.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Literally stupid.
Very entertaining. I'll give it that. But and of course, I can make it part of my matchup presentation here, too, which was fun. But anyway, over to the Falcons. Matt Ryan, an A grade. Make no mistake, this is a get-well game for Ryan, who is largely disappointed, actually, thus far. Devontae Freeman, an A grade. Should be no mistake about him either. Tevin Coleman, a B-. If the Falcons can jump up early, which is entirely possible, Coleman may see an uptick in volume, and I actually like him better than B- if that is the case. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and guess that it is. So let's bump that B- up to a B grade for Tevin.
I forgot to snuff on the bump.
Well, not on well, I mean, this is the Falcons.
They
run a clean organization over there in Atlanta. All right. Tulio Jones is a B+. He's no guarantee Tulio. He's no guarantee to play this weekend, but if he's active, no question he should be in your starting lineup. Taylor Gabriel's a B grade, a big play potential guy against a defense that gives up big plays. Coincidence? And then Austin Hooper, a B grade. Miami's middle of the road against the tight end position. They've allowed 2 tight end scores on the year, and Hooper, while very boomer bust, at least has a decent matchup here that I think you may be able to exploit in this very difficult year for the tight end position. Tight ends, of course, a big part of an offensive line. All right. So Brian and I, sorry, I got to go get a Kleenex. We're going to come right back.
I'm bleeding.
Yes, I'm bleeding very badly. We will be right back with more matchups. This is Week 6, 515 Fantasy Football on 1350 AM ESPN Radio. The 515 Fantasy Football Show on 1350 AM and 102.1 FM ESPN Radio, Des Moines, Iowa. Find us online at espndesmoines.com. Andy Hall and Brian Eikenberry continuing to break down all the Week 6 matchups and grade all the fantasy-relevant players. Who do we have next, Brian?
Ooh, we have the lovely New England Patriots at the New York Jets. Quarterback Tom Brady is going to get an A. This used to be a sneaky game, and you used to love looking for when it was so sexy Rexy. And, I mean, this was fun. I loved watching it, even though I could care less about the two teams. It was always a good game. So you never know how it's going to pan out. The Pats are playing terrible right now, and they are beatable. That's the thing. The Jets' defense is subpar. Brady's still averaging 320 yards a game. He has 11 touchdowns and 1 interception. So he's still a good start here. He's an obvious A. Gillislee, B+.
What to do with Gillislee?
B+. He clearly gets the bulk of the carries. It's the only running back over 100 yards rushing, and he has a handful of touchdowns. The Jets give up over 130 yards on the ground. So this week, my friends, I believe Gillislee is an RB1.
It's funny. I've had people ask me on Twitter and other places, can I drop Gillislee for...
Not this week.
And they, like Wayne Gallman. And I'm like, no.
Why
Why would you do that?
Yeah.
In fact, start him this week, and I bet he scores a couple touchdowns.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a good go here. Cooks is going to get a B+ out of me. I like Tommy tossing the rock, and Cooks has 16% of the targets, second only to Hogan. Who knows what Gronk is going to do, and honestly, if he goes, I think Gronk on the field helps out Cooks even more than someone like Hogan does. So Chris Hogan, he's going to get an A. Highest target share on the team, third in yards, but number 1 in touchdowns. If Gronk is out, Hogan is a wide receiver 1, but scale it back if you flex if Gronk does go. Gronk is Gronk, man. I don't trust the guy anymore.
Well, if Gronk plays, Amendola is actually the guy that's out. I mean, like, when Gronk doesn't play, Amendola gets a lot of the extra, love. Chris Hogan's always going to get what Chris Hogan gets.
Get it.
And if he starts referring to himself in the third person, then he's really made it.
Then he's really got it. All right, on to the Jets side of the ball. Quarterback Josh McCown, B+. Statistic I love about McCown, 71% completion rate.
Amazing,
on his
right?
passes.
It's going to break Bradford's record.
So against the worst pass defense in the league right now. The touchdown and interception ratio isn't great, but his stat line is going up with new additions, and he has over 1,000-yard passing now. So that's pretty exciting, right?
Bobby Brown's very first band was a boy band called New Edition.
Yes, it was.
Thank you.
Great.
Music trivia.
Running back situation, who knows? I believe Elijah McGuire is running the rock. I don't care about Forte anymore. I don't care about it. When the coach comes out and says, this is the guy, this is the guy. So he's apparently in the mix. What do you do now? Powell, McGuire? I don't know, but I think you should stick around for the bargain bins.
Yeah, it's not Powell. He's hurt, so he's probably not going to play.
So I think you should stick around for the bargain bins on this one.
Do that.
Robbie Anderson on the bench. Definitely not. Even though the Pats are bad, Anderson is honestly just absolutely terrible. I don't know why he isn't doing better, other than the obvious answer is he's terrible. Period. You just have to deal with it. Jermaine Kearse is going to get a B. Good opportunity to get great yards and a touchdown snag. He clearly has the trust and the chemistry with McCown. So he's an easy start for me this week. Austin Seferian-Jenkins, great start. He's going to have at least 50 yards and a touchdown.
Like that prediction. Bobby Brown was also in the movie Ghostbusters 2. He was the doorman at the hotel when they were going in to go bust some ghosts, and he asked them if he could have a proton pack for his little brother, and they told him no, that he couldn't have one because it's not a kid's toy. That was Bobby Brown, the door guy. Hilarious.
Is this like an all Coke episode?
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's kind of crack is whack, right?
Yeah.
So there you have it. San Francisco at Washington on the Niners side. Brian Hoyer, a C+. The Skins are top 5 against the pass, leaving Hoyer as a less than ideal quarterback option, aside from garbage time and any rushing stats he can compile. Carlos Hyde's a B-. The Skins are one of the few NFL teams allowing less than 4 yards per carry on the season. Add to that the hot hand comments from Kyle Shanahan earlier this week, an injury risk, and an emerging rookie talent in Matt Breida. It's not looking favorable for Hyde this week. Matt Breida, speaking of him, will give him a C+. He will get a good look in this game against a tough run defense that has only given up 2 rushing scores on the season. Questions remain, though. Therefore, I'm not advocating you start him outside of the most dire of circumstances. Pierre Garcon is a B-. Washington are 4th against the pass through 4 games, having allowed only 5 touchdowns through the air, an average of just over 240 yards per game to go around. Garcon is the most likely candidate to haul in a number of those targets, but he'll likely also have to deal with stud cover corner Josh Norman, which is why I'm scaling back any enthusiasm I may have had. Marquise Goodwin is a C+. He's quietly become a guy Brian Hoyer counts on any given pass play. He's worth keeping a very close eye on because he's not owned by many people. Marquise Goodwin. George Kittle is a B grade this week. My tight end super sleeper from the preseason shows emerged and then some last weekend, compiling 7 grabs on 9 targets, 83 yards and a score, his very first as a pro. And that was against Indy Bryan, who rank right next to Washington in terms of defending the tight end position. Neither are very good. I like Kittle again this week as his stock continues to rise. As far as Washington goes, Kirk Cousins is a B+. San Fran allows the 5th most passing yards to opposing quarterbacks, have given up 7 passing scores on the season. Cousins, due in large part to a below-average running game, should be taking to the air early and often here. Chris Thompson's a B-. He's a solid B in PPR leagues, B- standard. Thompson may not put up monster numbers like he did the first few games of the season consistently, but the threat is always there, particularly in a matchup like this one. Samaje Perine, I'm leaving on the bench. Combination of below-average O-line play and a back that simply might not be that good. He's got ball security issues, which means I'm not rolling him out. Terrell Pryor is a B+, should be lots of yards and scoring opportunities this week for Washington. Pryor figures to be in line for 8 to 10 targets, maybe more, which bodes well for his potential. Josh Doxson is a C+. Can't sleep on this guy either. He's shown us what he's capable of when opportunities are presented. Have no doubt Cousins will go back to him in the red zone, even though he dropped one back in week 4 that maybe cost Washington the game. Oops. Jamison Crowder, I'm leaving on the bench. It's a perplexing loss of opportunity, to say the least. My guess is the emergence of Chris Thompson, probably caused Crowder to become the odd man out of the Redskins' passing attack. Jordan Reed, a B- off the injury report, ready to be the tight end many of us predicted would be a top 5 guy at the position. Trouble is, the Niners have been downright nasty in defending against opposing tight ends on the season, allowing only 107 receiving yards through 5 games and no scores.
So when you said nasty, I don't know if I wanted to think nasty boys or nasty woman.
Oh, you nasty boys.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one. Is
All
that
right.
Janet Jackson?
Well, I was thinking nasty boys from WWE.
I can't remember. Was it Janet Jackson? Help me out on that.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I wasn't thinking about Janet Jackson.
I always think about Janet Jackson.
I'm sure you do. Let's fire up the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Arizona Cardinals. Quarterback Jameis Winston, I'm going to give him a B+. This is going to be my done after this. If he doesn't live up to my grades, we're done with him. B+, averaging 288 yards per game with less than 1 interception per game is good, honestly. His TDs need to bump up to make that hop. And with Martin back, he should get more opportunities to throw that kind of a pass.
It needs to what up again? It needs to what?
Bump up. Yep, there we go. We're going to get Coke in every segment. I'm going to go back and edit the intro.
What are you talking about? I just have a stuffed nose.
Doug Martin, he's going to get an A. The Cards give up 98 on the ground, but I'm confident that he will cut them up like last week as he warms up even more from his 74 yards and a score last week. Mike Evans, you got to give him an A here. The Cardinals are surprisingly in the bottom third in pass defense. Many anticipated them being above average in the secondary, but that's not the case. Evans, granted he's catching the ball, should have a large game with plenty of targets, and Martin drops that extra man back into the box. So why not Mike Evans, right?
Why not Patrick Peterson? That's why.
Doesn't stop anybody.
Okay, all right.
That's why they're in the bottom third in pass defense.
Yeah, that's everybody but Patrick Peterson.
Whatever.
All right.
Whatever.
All right.
Deshaun Jackson.
You're not allowed to disagree with you.
Boomer bust night. What's it going to be? Boomer bust night.
Well, it's ladies' night. Go
What
ahead.
are you even doing? I don't know what's
Nothing.
going
My
on here.
nose is stuffy.
The pattern for Djax is trending on a bust night. It's up, down, so this is the down week for Djax. I'm going with the forces of the universe and sticking to it. This is going to be a tight end production game. Cameron Brate, honorable mention, Mr. Touchdown USA.
Like him a lot.
Under the Cardinals side of the ball, quarterback Carson Palmer, B+. He was your big sleeper this year, wasn't he? He was like your
one of
little
a couple, I
sneaky
guess.
play.
Matthew Stafford was the big one for me. But Carson Palmer, yeah. I thought he was being underdrafted.
Is Adrian Peterson his ticket to success?
We'll talk about Adrian Peterson in a bit.
Well, I have him in my matchup. We need to talk about it now.
Well, go ahead.
All right.
See your matchup.
So, B+. I think the fear from the Buccaneers are going to push their linebackers down and give the opportunity for Carson Palmer to throw the ball. So I'm giving Palmer that B+. Adrian Peterson, I'm giving him a B-.
You really think he'll be in uniform and playing already?
Yeah, why not?
Does he know the playbook?
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Run left, run right. So
Funny.
I'll tell you a quick funny story about that.
Can it be quick?
No.
Okay.
We'll save it for later.
Please.
What are we doing? So Adrian Peterson, B. I don't think he's going to get 20 carries. I think he's just going to be out there to kind of get the go. What do you got to lose, right? Nobody else has been in the backfield anyway, so why not? Larry Fitzgerald's going to get the A. Like I said, I think it's going to pull that linebacker down, open up the passing game for the Cardinals to get on page. Fitzgerald is the only wide receiver with all 5 starts under his belt, 21% of the targets, but he only has 320 yards. So the big picture actually kind of sucks for him. John Brown, speeding it up here. Calling these two separate is going to be tricky. They've only been on the field together for 1 week, and it was shifty at best. I'm giving both a B because I don't know what's going to go down. After this week, we'll have 2 weeks to see how their target share splits with both of them on the field. We'll be able to make a better decision on who's who after next week.
You have to at least entertain the possibility that Peterson won't be on the field yet for the Cardinals, so maybe it's Andre Ellington. Certainly if you're in a PPR league, you're starting Ellington, but probably nobody else in that backfield. Yeah, I look forward to talking more about Peterson. We do have some conversating to do.
Yeah.
The pop quiz segment, 3 of Fantasy's toughest questions. We're going to fire them at Brian minutes from now, or actually, if you're listening digitally, seconds from now. 515 Fantasy Football on 1350 AM ESPN Radio. We begin hour number 2 on the 515 Fantasy Football Show, Week 6 edition, with a segment called the Pop Quiz. This is where I fire 3 questions at the brilliant Brian Eikenberry. He has no idea what these questions are. He had no way to prepare for them, no script in front of him. He's just going to go off the top of his head, and I'm going to tell him why he's wrong after he gives us his pathetic answer. But that's the way the Pop Quiz goes. Let's begin with question number 1, if Brian's ready.
Ready.
Adrian Peterson, who we just
that was
alluded
quick.
to shortly,
Woo.
or just a little bit ago, was traded earlier this week from New Orleans to Arizona. Currently, your 83rd ranked fantasy running back in half PPR leagues, by the way, with a whopping 9.5 fantasy points through 4 games. Going forward, as an Arizona Cardinal, will Adrian Peterson be an RB1, an RB2, a flex, or a bench guy in half PPR leagues?
I will give you a flex play at best. Let's be honest. If you still had it, you wouldn't be traded. If you still had it, you wouldn't have been getting 3 carries a game. This reminds me of when Emmitt Smith went to the Cardinals.
Or Chris Johnson after the Titans.
Yeah.
Or Edgerrin James after the Colts. There's a pattern here, Brian.
There is it's where running backs go to die is Arizona. It's like the elephant graveyard out in the desert, man. They just walk away. That's what I feel like this is because, I mean, that's the end of the conversation. If he was really good, he wouldn't have gone away. So, hey, he just went 1 year too long.
You're correct in saying he's a flex. The Cardinals' O-line is terrible. There's virtually zero chance Peterson is involved in the passing game there. That's Ellington. But their upcoming schedule is relatively favorable, facing several bottom-half rush defenses. Assuming Arizona brought him in to carry a bigger load than he was in New Orleans, and I think that's exactly what they're doing, Peterson is a great grab and stash, will be an attractive plug-and-play as bye weeks and injuries continue to deplete fantasy rosters. Sure, he's no longer Kate Upton attractive, but he is Tiffany Amber Thiessen ballpark in the right matchups. You know what I'm saying? You know who Tiffany Amber Thiessen
yes,
even
I
is?
know who she is, of course.
Kelly Kapowski, buddy. She's still pretty hot, right? But she's not,
Yeah, for
she's not
sure.
Saved by the Bell era hot. All right. Question number 2, since that fell flat on its freaking face.
Wah.
On the subject of Adrian's former team, the New Orleans Saints, and the state of their running game going forward, who will finish with more fantasy points in half PPR leagues the rest of the season? Mark Ingram or Alvin Kamara?
I think Mark Ingram, because he's always caught the ball a few times. I think he's going to get – we look what happened last year where Ingram really kind of took over, and he became to me, he was an RB1. I liked Ingram's play. He was able to catch the ball. He was fine. I think that's what's going to happen a little bit now. I think Peyton doesn't have any opportunities. He has to go with what's working because he's going to get fired this year.
You really believe that?
He was on the hot seat last year.
Wow.
If they don't make the playoffs this year, he's done, and you can probably count Drew Brees out too.
So your answer is Mark Ingram.
Yes.
Let's break it down. Ingram's rush attempt. I like that. Ingram's rush attempts since week 1, 6, 8, 14, 14. Ingram's targets since week 1 in the passing game, 5, 5, 4, 8. Okay, so that's a total of 42 rushes, 22 receptions. Kamara, rush attempts since week 1, 7, 1, 2, 5. Targets in the passing game since week 1, 4, 3, 3, 10. Kamara's totals, 15 rushes, 20 receptions. Both less than Mark Ingram. Easily the more consistent workload overall belongs to Ingram here. The bigger upside guy is Kamara. I don't think anybody will argue that. But his numbers have thus far been very inconsistent, as to be expected with a rookie. How much of that was Peterson, though? That's the question.
None.
I'd argue Ingram's potential workload was cut into more than Kamara's was.
For sure.
The presence of Peterson. Now that Peterson's gone, who stands to benefit the most? I say it's Ingram, even though Kamara's plenty attractive in PPR formats. And in fact, I'd probably start both in PPR leagues. I'd be okay with that. Ingram could be your running back 2 guy, and Kamara can be your flex start. You could start them both. My answer here in the question, though, is Ingram. And you're correct again. He finished running back 9 in half PPR last year, number 12 at the running back position in half PPR the year before. He's been there before. He's done that in this offense. Mark Ingram. Buy the Kamara hype.
I like the guy.
Fine, but don't forget about Mark Ingram.
I grabbed Kamara 2 weeks ago as the London game was happening because if you understand waiver rules, waivers don't activate until noon. So if you're watching that London game and someone's going off, you can grab him without screwing up your waiver wire.
It's a great tip.
So
what is that, a Yahoo league?
Yep.
Is it like that everywhere though?
Yeah, because you can set the league when waivers start. So waivers always start at Sunday at kickoff because they can't start on Thursday because if you need to pick somebody up, you're screwed.
Exactly.
It's not fair. You can't do it like that.
But
so,
Sunday prior to noon, like a London game that starts early in the morning.
If you're watching it, people are like, oh, man, I'll put in for him in waivers. Go ahead because he's going to be gone. He's going to be on my bench. That's what I did.
Don't
Ninja.
Don't get cocky now. You're 2 for 2.
Okay.
You've been on a roll lately, too.
I have.
I don't like that at all.
Pro tip.
What's your tip?
Eat garbage.
Great. Number 3.
Corn nuts, specifically.
Well, there goes corn. There goes Corn Nuts as a potential sponsor. Thanks, Brian.
I love corn nuts.
No, they're good.
Except they changed the recipe of their barbecue flavor. It's a little bit sweeter now, which makes me angry.
Okay.
Next.
Any other grievances you want to air right now? No.
I miss the slush puppy slushes.
Okay, that's enough of that. Texans rookie quarterback Desean Watson currently ranks 3rd overall in fantasy scoring.
Stud.
Just 6 points behind number 2 Tom Brady, and just 13 points behind number 1 Alex Smith. Oh, and by the way, Desean Watson didn't even start in week 1. Remember, he entered the game in the second half of that one. Now he's looking like a QB1 that should be considered an every week starter. Should you hold or trade him?
So I've thought about this actually over the last couple of days.
As a Watson owner in one of your leagues?
So I said a long time ago at week 1, like, this is your last chance to get this guy because he's going to get hot and it's going to go bonkers. So with that being said, I will err on the side of trading. And this is why. When's the last time a rookie quarterback has finished in the top 5?
Cam?
Okay, before that.
I don't know. Can't think of one.
It's like in the scope of success, so minor. So sure, he could maintain and go, I wish him well. He seems like a really cool dude, giving his paycheck away to the worker ladies and stuff. Seems like a cool dude. But if you have a decent backup, a decent number 2 quarterback that you picked up Watson off the waiver wire to stash, so you've got another one, if you have the opportunity to take a slight downgrade in QB, but you can upgrade 2 other spots, like if you can take your running back position from a 6-point to a 16-point and sacrifice a little bit in the QB and upgrade another one, I say go for it.
Brian, you knocked this out of the park. You hit almost every single one of the points I had down here. He is absolutely a trade guy right now. His value will likely never be higher than it is right now, coming off a performance in which he netted his owners 40-plus fantasy points in most scoring formats. If you have a competent quarterback already on roster, as you alluded to, any of the current top 12 guys, essentially, Smith, Brady, Rodgers, Prescott, Wentz, Wilson, Newton, Stafford, Breeze, Rivers, especially the guys that have already surpassed their bye weeks, and this is the one thing you missed, Breeze, Ryan, maybe a Cousins even if you want to include him in that company, here's your golden opportunity to deal Watson and get the piece or pieces you're missing that'll get you to a championship. This is what makes fantasy champions a situation like this where I know the emotion is you do not want to get rid of Watson because he's been your golden ticket the past couple of weeks. Trust me
Go
when
for
I
the
say
upgrade.
Trust me when I say you can get guys right now that will lead you to a championship.
I agree.
That is the way it is.
If you can, it's so simple when you break it down by numbers. Okay, so I'll just take a little bit off the QB and I can upgrade 2 other positions, meaningful upgrades to the weak spots in my roster. Do it.
And that is your pop quiz, which Brian schooled thoroughly this week. Again, that's 2 or 3 in a row that you've been 3 for 3.
Two weeks in a row, 3 for 3. And the other one was 2 for 3.
Plenty more still to come. More matchups. Week 6 on 515 Fantasy Football. Invite you to stick around. Back into the Week 6 matchups. Andy Hall and Brian Eikenberry on the 515 Fantasy Football Show. You hear us each and every Thursday on 1350 AM and 102.1 FM ESPN Radio in Des Moines, Iowa. The show also available digitally, so if you missed any part of it, you can go back and listen at your leisure, or your leisure, however you pronounce that crazy word. I guess if you're British, it would be leisure.
Yeah, I'm American. I rebel.
Leisure. Yeah, even though EI sound in German is I. You always pronounce the second vowel. Anyway, there's your
Poopenheimer.
There's your language lessons for today. We are available iTunes, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, whatever you call them these days. They're available to listen to our show. We greatly appreciate you checking us out as we dive right back into the matchups with the LA Rams and the Jacksonville Jaguars. For the Rams, Jared Goff, I'm leaving on the bench. There are 5 teams allowing an average of less than 200 yards passing per game through the first 5 weeks. Jacksonville happens to be one of them, and to boot, they've only given up 3 passing scores all year while collecting 10 interceptions. 5 of them, of course, by Big Ben last week. Steer clear of this matchup for Goff. Todd Gurley, though, I'm giving an A grade to. The Jags allow a league-high 5.4 yards per carry. They've given up the second most rushing yards in the NFL through the first 5 weeks and 5 touchdowns. All signs point to a big day for Gurley and the Rams' rushing attack. I hope he can hold on to the ball as he gets near that pylon this time around. Did you see that one last week?
I did.
He went for the pylon. He's got it in one hand. It slips out. Oops. Before he hits the pylon.
Yep.
Touchback Seattle. Ouch.
Wow.
Sammy Watkins, Cooper Kupp, Tavon Austin. As far as I'm concerned, the entire Rams passing game is on the bench this week. Jalen Ramsey, A.J. Bouye, by far the league's most destructive duo in the defensive backfield. No chance for any Rams pass catchers to produce anything worth your starting lineup this week, so don't worry about it. On to the Jags. Blake Bortles, a C grade. The Rams are extremely mediocre on the air against the pass, but Bortles, let's face it, not a quarterback I'm trusting anywhere near my roster, let alone a starting lineup. Some, however, may be in dire need of a guy this week. Find someone else. Leonard Fournette is an A grade, a matchup made in heaven here. The Rams allow the 6th most rushing yards per game to opposing backs, and opposing backs have scored 7 times on them already this season. Fournette is a shoo-in for a big workload. He is one of my easiest calls of the week. If Brian gives out 1 A+ typically every few months, I would give out the A+ to Leonard Fournette this week.
You know, his jersey just went to Canton. He's the youngest running back with a 90-yard touchdown run.
Really?
Yep.
That's fantastic.
So it's already in the Hall of Fame.
Boy, what a crop of rookie running backs this year.
Huge
and we were
class.
not nearly as excited about this class as we were last year with, Ezekiel Elliott and all those guys. So, wow. Marquise Lee, I'm giving a C+ to. These poor Jags pass catchers. because Fournette is the centerpiece of this offense, and because Jacksonville has a head coach that actually said he'd prefer if they ran the ball on every single play and meant it literally, there's not much to like here from a fantasy perspective. Lee, for what it's worth, appears to be the main target guy week to week. Allen Hurns is a C grade. For the first couple of weeks following the Allen Robinson injury, it appeared as though Hurns would be the primary scoring guy for the Jags pass catchers. He's been relatively invisible as of late. Mercedes Lewis, a C+. It's a decent matchup as the Rams have already allowed 3 tight end scores on the season. Lewis, though, nothing more than a desperation play if you have no other options. You're certainly not going to see another 3-touchdown explosion from him anytime soon.
All right, let's do Pittsburgh at Kansas City. Big Ben, eat it. I hate you. You cost me. C+. Historically terrible on the road against the below-average defense results in Ben needing a big bounce back. The stat of concern is that he has 6 touchdowns. That's 1.2 touchdowns per game in a league that you have to score points.
That's not good.
No, not at all. C+. Le'Veon Bell, on the other hand, I'm giving him an A. If Big Ben is the big bust, it should leave plenty of check downs and 25 rushing attempts for Le'Veon. He's averaging 20 carries per game with 3 touchdowns, but surprisingly, he only has 1 rush over 20 yards. So, little nugget again. What's going on in Pittsburgh? Antonio Brown, I'm going to give him an A because he's always an A. Let's be honest. The great thing here is that interceptions don't count against your wide receiver. And while Brown may not be getting his share of touchdowns, he still averages 110 yards per game. And that's fine. If you're going to give me 110 yards per game, you don't have to score a touchdown. I'm fine.
Yeah, Antonio Brown should never be a question. I think when we were missing out on Big Ben a couple years ago and Landry Jones was your quarterback, I was still telling you to start Antonio Brown.
Sure was. So Martavis Bryant, he's going to get a B. Likely going to pop up on the radar for some chunks of yards and then receipts. Don't count on a big day, but I do see a touchdown. Juju Schuster, no grade.
Are you sure?
Yes. He is a Seth Roberts of the Steelers.
He's been targeted more than Martavis Bryant has.
I don't care.
Okay.
He's a TD thief. It's going to make you start him only in desperation.
Sound like a bitter Bryant owner to
me. God, it's so aggravating.
I hear you, though. I totally understand.
On to the Chiefs side of the ball, quarterback Alex Smith, he's going to get a B. Look, the Steelers may suck right now offensively, but their pass defense, based on yardage, is the new number 1 with 139 yards per game.
Yep.
Likely skewed because Roethlisberger was giving the Jaguars the ball at their own 20. Like, don't worry, you don't need to do it.
It's a good point.
And then you let Fournette run for 90 yards. You don't need to pass. So Bortles is like, all right, this is cool. I look like a stud this week.
Bortles went 2 of 7 for 13 yards last week.
Kareem Hunt, he's going to get an A. Look, if they're good against pass, they suck at run defense. They also give up 130 yards on the ground. So look for the elite level in Hill this week. Not like last week, but this week to be the dominant. Yeah. What'd I say?
I said Hill.
Oh, I was talking about the next guy.
I know.
So he's going to improve on his 600 yards rushing and 6 total scores. So I think you're going to get the Kareem Hunt from week 2 instead of the Kareem Hunt from week 5. So if you're keeping track, that's really good.
Week 5 was perfectly fine. He just didn't get to the end zone.
Which was great for me.
If you're giving that guy 25 to 30 carries a game and he's wearing down a defense over the course of the game, by the middle third, early fourth quarter, he is running through defenses. I mean, that's the best part about Kareem Hunt's game.
Tyreek Hill's going to get a B+. Neck and neck with Kelsey for the reins of number 1 wide receiver. Also tied with him for touchdowns. 356 yards through 5 isn't exactly breakaway, which overall passing shows reliance on the running game. So that's not good if you pulled him early, but hey, Kareem Hunt or the Tyreek Hill is still a decent play, especially if you pulled him in the mid rounds. Travis Kelce, I'm maybe skipping over the other wide receivers.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, Kelsey's going to get a B here if he goes.
It's a big question mark. Big question mark.
You have to wait until Thursday. If they start getting limited in practice, just watch it. If he goes, I'll give him a B. Just because the Steelers do have good pass covering linebackers. So you just kind of got to watch the concussion protocol there.
The LA Chargers at Oakland. First, those Chargers. Phillip Rivers, a B+, facing a Raiders secondary somewhat similar to the one he just saw in Week 5 when he torched the Giants for 258 passing yards and 3 scores. Oakland has looked better on paper, at least the past couple of weeks. Of course, that'll happen when you're facing quarterbacks like Joe Flacco and Trevor Siemian. Rivers is a fine start this week in the black hole. Melvin Gordon, an A grade. This guy can beat you on the ground. He can beat you through the air. Gordon will excel at both any given week, but especially in plus matchups like this against a Raiders defense that gives up over 125 yards per game on the ground and is susceptible against pass-catching guys like Gordon as well. Keenan Allen gets an A grade. Should see big target volume on Sunday afternoon. I'm excited to see what he can do in his first head-to-head against Oakland since 2015 when he hauled in 9 passes for 89 yards. Pretty decent day. Rivers will lean on him when the Chargers take to the air, and the Raiders have nobody that can defend Allen. Tyrell Williams gets a B-. For dart throws, you certainly could do worse. The last time Williams faced these Raiders in Oakland was October of last season. He caught 5 passes for 117 yards and a score. Granted, that was with Allen out of the lineup, but still, we know he can produce against Oakland in Oakland. Hunter Henry, I'm giving a B grade to. Scored in both his head-to-head matchups with Oakland last season. I like him again in this one quite a bit. Antonio Gates, I'm just going to leave on the bench because I think, like we've sort of prognosticated, Brian, that once he got that record, it was pretty much donezo.
It has been.
Yep.
Non-existent.
How about them Raiders? Derek Carr saying he's coming back this week. Good chance of it. A C+, coming off injury against a top 10 pass defense that features a dangerous pass rush. Good week to stream another option at the quarterback position, at least in my opinion. Marshawn Lynch is an A grade. Nobody gives up more yards per game on the ground than the Chargers do. Over 160 per game through the first 5. Beast mode should feast on Sunday afternoon. If he doesn't, something is very, very wrong there. Michael Crabtree is a B grade. As usual, like him much more than Amari Cooper, especially considering the matchup here. The LA Chargers have been good, but they've allowed over 200 receiving yards per game to opposing pass catchers, and 8 different pass catchers have scored on them this season. Amari Cooper, I mentioned, I'm giving him a C grade this week. It's not as bad as the bench I put him on last week, but because of his struggles thus far this season, he's barely a starting grade for me. I think the Raiders employ a run-heavy approach anyway, so there's probably not a ton of upside for him anyway. Seth Roberts, a bench, just not seeing the volume, though he does have some touchdown upside in the right matchups. Just not sure this is one of those. Jared Cook, a C grade. LA is one of only 6 NFL teams that haven't allowed a tight end touchdown yet. I don't see Cook making a difference maker in this one. And that'll do it for those matchups, Brian.
Whee!
Got a couple more segments remaining in this edition of the show. Of course, our next segment will break down the final 2 matchups of the week, the Sunday Nighter, which is all kinds of exciting for Brian, and a Monday Nighter, which might be of fantasy relevance to some people, but it'll be a pretty boring game for most, I figure. We'll also do a recap of week number 5 in the 515 Fantasy Football Listener League.
Stupid.
I know. You're really going to love this, though.
Did you write them when you were sleepy again?
I was nodding off and laughing at the same time. I don't know how it's going to translate, but we're going to hear all of it coming up here in just a bit. Don't forget bargain bins, flea flicker, all that still to come as well on this edition of the 515 Fantasy Football Show. You're hearing us on 1350 AM ESPN Radio. The 515 Fantasy Football Show on Facebook. Like us, 515 Fantasy Football on Twitter at 515 Fantasy. I'm at Andy Hall Radio. He's at IkeFFB. That's IKEFFB. Andy Hall, Brian Eikenberry. One final set of matchups. We'll begin with the Sunday Nighter, and Brian's got that.
Giddy up. Giants at Denver. Giants, everybody better be on the bench. The only one I know who's starting is Eli Manning. I have no idea who's left. Let's be real. They were on the practice squad a week ago. They literally did nothing but mimic the other team they're going to be playing. There's no help here. Sorry, just move on.
I guess in the most desperate of circumstances, if you're in need of a tight end, you figure Evan Ingram's probably going to see an increase.
I guess, but
running back. I mean, there's Gallman and there's Darkwa. I mean, that is so not interesting.
Yeah,
to me.
You can't. I would start Kamara over anybody on the Giants roster at this point.
Yeah, I'm not even sure there's anybody that you might consider picking up. I mean, I guess Roger Lewis, Scott, if you're really in a bad place, he's a wide receiver that caught a touchdown last week, and I think I want to say he's a Bowling Green guy, and I thought I saw him play in college, and he's actually really good, but he's not that prototypical dominating wide receiver type. So
there's no help for the Giants.
Boy, that's really bad.
And even with Rodgers, Cromartie getting booted out, it's certainly going to help the Broncos out. Quarterback Trevor Siemian, he's going to get a B+. I believe Siemian will have a great game coming off the bye and at home. A defeated Giants team with nobody left. Middle-of-the-road defense who just sent DRC packing for the week. 250 and 2 touchdowns for Siemian. C.J. Anderson, big old fat A here. While the Giants may put up a tiny fight on defense, they sure don't do it in the run. Look for a heavy dose of C.J. Anderson to get it turning. The Broncos are up 21 at the half. Demaryius Thomas is going to get a B, and so is Emmanuel Sanders. Both going to get B's. No A pluses because there's going to be no need to give them 150 yards in these big games. There will literally be no need. A name I haven't heard in a while is Demaryius Thomas, and I wondered why. It's the same old Demaryius Thomas last year and the year prior. It's like the Raiders. Demaryius Thomas gets the yards while Emmanuel Sanders gets the touchdowns. Good yards, but you have to beg for one of them 60-yard screen pass touchdowns for Demaryius Thomas. Emmanuel Sanders, slightly ahead of DT in targets, but is lacking in yardage. It's a fair trade-off. I mean, he has 2 touchdowns, and honestly, is the goal line pushes are more of a running team at this point for the Broncos.
It was starting to look like Jamal Charles was going to push C.J. Anderson for a decent percentage of the backfield, time and snaps and touches and everything else. But then it looked like a reversal of that perhaps the following week. So what do you expect going forward?
Well,
I mean, in a positive game script, as this will most likely be.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I've been a big fan of Jamal Charles. I was hoping he was going to go with the Lions this offseason. That would have been nice for me. Look, he's still got like 5 yards to carry. I mean, he's still doing it when he's given the opportunity, but I think that's how they're playing him. I think they're just going to give him enough to keep him active, keep him running. They're not going to rely on him, but in games like this, you could see Jamal Charles the entire fourth quarter.
It's true. The Monday Nighters, Indy at Tennessee. For the Colts, Jacoby Brissette is a B+. Like him a lot this week. Great matchup. Was absolutely an option if you are dealing with bye weeks, injuries, or underperforming starters. I got more on Brissette coming up later in the show. Marlon Mack, I'm giving a B grade to. The Titans are about as middle of the road as you can get in terms of run defense through 5 games. They allow on average 3.7 yards per carry, roughly 110 yards on the ground per game. They've only given up 3 rushing scores thus far. Mack looked like a guy that wants Gore's gig last week. And though I don't think we're there just yet, it's encouraging to have him healthy, back in the lineup and contributing. Gives us a decent glimpse into the future for the backfield in Indy. Frank Gore is a C grade. 2 touchdown dependent to count on him. You're better off finding another option now that he's splitting carries. He's a flex play at best. T.Y. Hilton is an A grade. Get this guy in your lineup, dude. Excellent matchup here against a secondary that will not be able to hang with his combination of speed and elusiveness. Dante Moncrief, I'll throw a bone to this week. Give him a B-. Granted, he only helps your fantasy squad if he hits pay dirt, but in a matchup like this one, it's certainly possible. Flex option, no matter the scoring format, especially for those whose wide receiver core have been depleted by injury or bye week blues. Moncrief's a guy you can look at. Jack Doyle is on the bench, though. Tennessee, for as mediocre as they are against the pass, have actually been pretty stout in defending against the tight end position. Doyle isn't in the conversation as a tight end one this week. No way. All right, folks, the 515 Fantasy Football Listener League is presented by our friends at Iowa Firecracken. Iowa-owned, Iowa-operated, America-approved. They are online at firecracken.com. Couple locations, one here in the Des Moines Metro and another up north. You like how I up north? Duck, duck, gray duck.
Yeah, I'm busy going to firecracken.com right now.
Yeah, well, there's that. They also are on Facebook, Iowa Firecracken, and on Twitter at iFirecracken. That's the letter I, Firecracken. Come December 1st, we hope that if you're in the market for some beautiful things that go boom.
Red, white, and booming, baby.
You'll be buying from 3 local guys that love fantasy football. They love explosive beauty, and they love the business they're in. They hope you'll check them out online or in the shops.
I love the freaking slogan. Iowa-owned, Iowa-operated, America-approved.
Boom, right?
They need Ted Nugent to do some freaking stuff, man. Kid Rock.
I mean, I'm more than happy to voice whatever they want me to voice. Doesn't have to be Ted.
I'm ready to do YouTube videos
Ted
of
costs-
Roman candle and
Ted
I want to do
Ted's not
Roman,
cheap.
I want to do Roman candle cannons in my underwear in a snowbank. It's going to be awesome. Let's do this.
Are you ready for the recap of week
I
5
suppose.
of the Listener League, Brian?
Yep.
Now that you're done talking about yourself in your underwear.
It's going to be awesome. I have Star Wars underwear. It'll be
A
great.
recap of week 5 of the Listener League. My squad tipped the Moo Cow guy over this week, 117.14 to 85.08. The so creatively named Brian's team gets manhandled by Steve's Annihilators, 94.56 to 78.84. We got to talk about this, Brian. Steve handicapped you. I mean, he gave you a chance. Starting a kicker who was on a bye week.
I got blasted, dude.
He took a 0 and he still whooped your ass.
I got blasted.
What happened, man?
I just this team, but that's fine. You know what? The players I wanted, the listeners listened, and they were pulling the people that I wanted.
Like I browned ahead of time?
Yeah.
Sniping you.
And that's cool, I guess, because you know what? That means you guys listened and you took the advice and you're winning with it. So, fine.
This is a bit of a humble brag, but I've heard now 2 other fantasy football shows, and I won't mention any names because they don't deserve the free publicity. But there have been 2 fantasy shows now that have started doing segments about the art of sniping.
Copycats.
I'm like, somebody's listening to our show. Because before that, I'd never heard anybody using the term sniping. I came with it off the top of my head. I know what snipe hunting is.
Yeah.
That's
Hold
kind of
this
where the
sack, stand here.
Yep. Look for a big, goofy-looking bird.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Stand there for 3 hours and do nothing. It's amazing. Oh, I just gave that away, didn't I? The so creatively named Brian's team, unfortunately, took the L this week. Petty and the Jets, big upset over Taco Johan, 84.56 to 66.82. Petty and the Jets, surprising some folks, kind of like his NFL team. Surprising. Way to blow that number 1 pick, by the way.
Wah.
The artist formerly known as Comb the Desert gets rid of the lice. Blowing out Boomin. 123.52 to 89.44. Comb the Desert. Lice. Remember when they used to do that, the nurses back in the day?
Yep.
They'd have the comb and they'd look
The
for your lice.
toothpicks.
Yeah. Purple People Eaters now on the verge of extreme obesity, having gobbled up yet another opponent. This one, oinked. 87.52 to 41. Oink. 41 points in week 5. Oink.
Dirty monkey.
Seriously. Are you even trying at this point, brother? See, I looked at his roster. I'm trying to figure out a way, man. There's just nothing there. I'm sorry. There just isn't.
Roasted.
And Free Willy Guy forgot the chloroform, so he choked Phillip with his own bolo tie, 91.22 to 87.16. The chloroform, yes. This week, my squad looks to leave a black and blue blemish on the unbruised Purple People Eaters. Wee Willie attempts to deep fry a taco. Petty and the Jets hope to rid themselves of all the sand that's been up his keister, taking on the artist formerly known as Comb the Desert. Boomin is hungry for some burgers, steaks, maybe some snout this week, trying to filet mignon moo cow guy. Brian's team, on the other hand, prefers pork. Also excited about the possibility of some snout going up
Nom,
against
nom,
Oink.
nom.
And that's funny because Brian doesn't eat pork, which is hilarious.
Unless it's some crispy bacon.
Which you'll do that all day long. And you can get that off Oink this week. And Steve's Annihilators hope that's Phillip's bolo tie, and he's not just happy to see him this week. That's what I got.
So
Apparently when I'm tired, I'm not that funny.
no, I think you passed that point, you know.
Trying too hard now?
Well, no, I think you might have been too tired. You got to get yourself in the sweet spot.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
you know
no,
what? I might have been too tired. You're right about that.
So I see here Iowa Firecracking has their own apparel line. And I'm sitting here looking at myself in this grubby tank top I got on, wondering why I don't have the Firecracking red, white, and booming.
Maddie, we got to talk to you about some apparel, brother. All right. We have one more segment remaining. We'll go through our bargain bin picks. If you need a dart throw or 3, Brian and I have those coming up. We'll do the flea flicker as well and talk about whatever we want to. All next on the 515 Fantasy Football Show on 1350 AM ESPN Radio. Final segment of this week's edition of the 515 Fantasy Football Show on 1350 AM, 102.1 FM, ESPN Radio, Des Moines, Iowa. If you missed any part of the show, you can always go back and listen digitally on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, all kinds of options. I'm Andy Hall. That's Brian Eikenberry. We thank you for listening this week. Before we go, Bargain Bin segment, sponsored by our friends at Twisted Vine Brewing Company on West Town Parkway in West Des Moines. Online at twistedvinebrewery.com. Got about 30 beers on tap there, 25 of them brewed on site. And what's really cool is you go inside the bar and they have like the little tutorial written up on the board up there so you can see how the whole process works right in front of you. They do have wine as well and some non-alcoholic beverages too, Brian. I had
root
some
beer,
of the root
Gatorade,
beer. Yeah, root
a whole
beer
bunch of stuff. The root beer is really good.
It is.
Brew pub pizzas, man, delish.
No doubt. Twisted Vine Brewery is the place Brian and or I are hanging out Sunday morning starting at 10:30. They open their doors at 10:30. Get all the pregame stuff underway. Brian and I answer all those questions, especially those of you that come out and see us at Twisted Vine.
Stick around, man. Let's drink some brews. Let's have a good time. Let's watch Red Zone. Let's talk some smack to each other. I'm all about making fun of your team.
And then once noon rolls around, as Brian alluded to, the Red Zone channel is on all the TVs out there. So, we're taken care of with all of our fantasy goodness at Twisted Vine Brewery. Sunday morning starting at 10:30.
Yeah, also the last Sunday I found out real quick that sampling all the beers will catch up with you at some point, especially when you're ripping into like the 9.5% alcohols. When you're sampling them, trying to figure out what's delish, man, it'll catch up with you pretty quick.
It's all right, though, because they have, in addition to tables and chairs and, bar stools. They have couches, and it's very comfortable.
I ain't going to hate you for taking a nap.
That's where I ended up last Sunday when I was hanging out there. I just ended up on the couch with the big screen TV right in front of me. It was amazing. All right, bargain bins for week 6. 1 quarterback, 1 running back, 1 pass catcher. Who's your quarterback this week, Brian?
Quarterback Josh McCown.
Ooh, boy.
I am picking a Jet in my bargain bin. He's up against the worst team in the league when it comes to passing yards allowed and passing touchdowns allowed. No team has given up more yards and touchdowns than the New England Patriots, and he has a new target in Austin Seferian-Jenkins. The Jets are thinking about making the playoffs with 3 wins under the belt. Watch out.
My quarterback is Jacoby Brissette from the Colts. He's owned in only 12% of Yahoo Fantasy Leagues. At least he was earlier this week, 12%. I'm sure that number's gone up at least a little. Coming off his first 300-plus yard game, passing game in Week 5, even if Brissette doesn't throw a touchdown pass, as was the case last week against the Niners, he can help you out with his legs. On the season, he's run for 3 scores, including 1 this past Sunday. This week, he'll see a Tennessee Titans secondary that has allowed the 8th most passing yards over the first 5 games of the season and the most passing touchdowns of anyone with 12. Who's your running back, Brian?
My running back is Elijah McGuire. What? That's
another Jet.
That's 2 Jets. I know, ridiculous. I'm sorry. I won't do it again. Look, he's a great grab and stash as the team is looking to turn over the roster midseason and not wait for the end. They keep on competing and would love nothing more to just stick it to the Patriots with their newfound toy.
I got a different kind of Jet for my running back. Jerick McKinnon from the Vikings was only 32% owned in Yahoo Fantasy Leagues earlier in this week. Imagine that has skyrocketed now following his Week 5 explosion in Chicago, in which he got 22 touches for 146 combo yards
Latavius
and scored.
who?
This week, the Vikings play host to division rival Green Bay, who allow over 121 rushing yards per game, giving up 4 touchdowns to opposing backs through 5 games. The beauty of playing this Jet is that game script will never dictate his workload as he contributes both running and catching the ball. Who's your pass catcher?
Austin Seferian-Jenkins.
What?
3 for 3 on the Jetaronis, folks. Look, hey, get them while they're hot. Get them while they're out there. 3 bins, 3 Jets. Why not, right? Play the matchup, and you will see that Austin Seferian-Jenkins will have a top 5 tight end game this week against the sucky Patriots and have a hungry McCown to get a win at home.
This is going to blow your mind, Brian. My pass catcher this week, Jermaine Kearse of the New York Jets.
Ooh.
Simply put, the Jets should be throwing the ball a lot this week against a Patriots secondary that looked better in Week 5, but still allowed 334 yards through the air, despite the only 1 score to Desean Jackson. In total, they've already given up a total of 12 touchdowns through the air over the first 5 weeks of the season. Kearse has 3 touchdowns in 5 games, should continue to be the most targeted Jets wideout as he's been since Week 1. So Jermaine Kearse, a guy to look at, perhaps, for this week, if you didn't like all the other Jets Brian just listed off. All right, we got some time for our flea flicker segment, which is Brian and I talking about whatever we want to talk about. I think what we should lead with here, Brian, is next week is going to be unique for us next week. Reason being, business. Brian is going to be unavailable to do the show, which is very unfortunate because I love having Brian as my co-host. So I plan on holding down the fort next week, but it's going to be different than how we normally do this.
Yeah, it's not going to be good.
And
he's not going to be right.
I've been killing it all year, just for the record. You're the one that said off the top that you had a rough week last week.
Last week was poop sauce.
Was not poop sauce for me. I had a really good week as usual. But anyway, I'm toying with the idea of maybe doing like just a basic kind of start-sit type of abbreviated show. I'm thinking, yes, maybe still doing a bargain bin segment, and maybe, of course we'll do the listener league recap and all that. But I mean, I think it's going to be just digital next week. Not going to be on the radio side because the radio side requires that 2-hour chunk of time, and I'm not going to dedicate 2 hours if I don't have my co-host. I'll be depressed. Trying to talk to myself for 2 hours does not sound like fun to me. So I'm going to do some work for week 7, and if I'm lucky, maybe I can have a friend of mine maybe join me for a nice, fun, hour-long maybe start-sit type of show.
Playful banter.
That's what I'm thinking. Maybe we'll just talk off the cuff instead of like the, total.
A philosophical episode, if you will.
Yeah, a little bit maybe. I mean, some humor thrown in, of course, but I mean.
A little Jerry Springer.
It's not going to be the same without you, Brian. Let me tell you.
Who's the daddy? 1-888-45-MORI.
We know who the Steve is in this relationship. Jerry's over there.
Gotcha.
So that's what we're thinking for next week. What else? Anything else you want to touch on, Brian? I just want to give everybody a heads up. Next week's going to be different. Digital only next week.
Star Wars trailer came out. Monday Night Football. Most viewed Monday Night Football ever in history.
Halftime. Gotta love it.
I'm telling you. Luke's going bad.
That's Brian.
Complete misdirection. Rey is going evil. Rey is joining Snoke. Guarantee it. Complete misdirection. Kylo's getting pulled to the light. They're going to flip-flop sides here. That's what's going to happen, man.
I mean,
total shake-up.
No matter what does end up happening, I'm just excited that there's a new film coming in December. So there's that.
We got Thor Ragnarok next month.
Yeah, I'm not as excited about
I'm
that.
super excited about that.
It'll be good, but I just, the Star Wars thing, that's where I'm at. So one last thing I want to touch on before the end of the show here, and I got a couple of minutes. I do work for another radio station besides ESPN here in Des Moines. It's a rock station called Laser 103.3 FM. And we do a drive each and every year, collecting newer, gently used costumes for kids here in central Iowa who can't afford them. And try to give these kids a fun Halloween and something fun to do and a cool costume to wear. Because what kid doesn't want to become somebody else and play costume, Could you imagine being a young kid, and your parents are in a tough spot and they can't afford a costume for you? I mean,
yeah, I've been there, done that, and reused like the same rubber mask for 4 years in a row and put on a flannel shirt.
And that's fine, but there are some kids that don't even have that. And so what we're looking to do is help out if you can. So if you're here in central Iowa, you want to contribute to the Costume for Kids campaign. Newer, gently used costumes, cash donations also welcome at any Metro CarX location in Ames or Des Moines. There's also the Laser Studios downtown on Locust at the Des Moines Radio Group. And
right across from the Sculpture Park, you'll see me catching Pokemon.
There you go. Nobby's Party Superstore in Clive is on board as well. There's a number of locations. You can go to our laser1033.com is the website. Tell you where to go if you can donate a newer, gently used costume or cash. Everything we collect goes to children and families of Iowa. It's a really great cause. And I just want to mention that because, especially now that I have kids, I'm really sensitive to kids that, through no fault of their own, are held back in some way, shape, or form from being a kid and having fun. And that's how it should be. So anyway, if you can give, it's a cause that's obviously very near and dear to me. So that's Costumes for Kids. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it. Brian and I appreciate you always
very much
listening to our show. We hope that week 6 is a lot less brutal and a lot more fruitful for your squad. And if you need anything, again, reach out. Like us on Facebook, 515 Fantasy Football. We're on Twitter, at 515 Fantasy. I'm at Andy Hall Radio. He's at Ike FFB, IKEFFB. You can email us if you like, 515fantasy@gmail.com. There's a lot of ways to get a hold of us, Brian. I mean, we're always looking to have the two-way conversation. So whatever kind of help you're looking for.
If you want to talk snacks, you could probably just hit me up instead.
I like snacks. What? I can't talk snacks?
No.
Thanks again for listening, you guys. If you missed any part of the show, go back and listen digitally. For Brian Eikenberry, I'm Andy Hall. This is 515 Fantasy Football.